Something just happened in Britain that has shaken the very foundation of power. No warning, no countdown. One signature changed everything. Parliament is gone. Political order is broken. And Keir Starmer is now standing alone in the middle of a storm that could end his career forever. This is not just breaking news. This is a turning point that Britain may never forget. The moment the news broke, Westminster froze, phones rang non-stop, lawmakers rushed into emergency discussions, television studios cut into regular programming. The official confirmation was short, cold and powerful. King Charles has dissolved Parliament. With those words, Britain entered a period of deep political uncertainty. For the public, the shock was immediate. Many people struggled to understand how such a dramatic step could happen so suddenly. For politicians, it was worse. Years of planning, months of negotiation, and countless unfinished bills were instantly wiped away. Dissolving Parliament is not just a formal process. It resets the entire political system. It stops debate, ends authority, and forces the country into a new phase where nothing is guaranteed. At the centre of this crisis is Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Constitutionally, the King acts on advice. That simple fact has turned Starmer into the main target of political anger. Within minutes, critics began asking the same question again and again. Why now? The timing could not be more dangerous. Britain is already facing economic pressure, rising public frustration, and declining trust in leadership. In such a climate, stability is everything. Instead, the country receives shock, while royal officials emphasise that the move followed established procedure. Political reality does not always follow legal logic. Perception matters more than explanation, and the perception spreading across the country is that the government has lost control. Inside Westminster, fear quickly replaced confusion. Members of Parliament were seen leaving buildings in silence, avoiding cameras, unsure of what to say. Senior figures from multiple parties reportedly held urgent private meetings, trying to assess the damage. Some believe early elections are now inevitable. Others fear a deeper constitutional confrontation. For Starmer, this is a nightmare scenario. His leadership image has always been built on calm professionalism and legal discipline. But moments like this demand something more powerful: authority, clarity, and confidence. So far, critics argue those qualities have been missing. The media response has been brutal. Headlines use words like chaos, collapse, and political earthquake. Commentators are openly questioning whether Starmer misjudged the situation or lost support at the highest level. Even neutral analysts admit that dissolving Parliament under these conditions creates massive risk. Every delay in explanation fuels speculation. Every hour without reassurance deepens public anxiety. For ordinary citizens, the questions are simple but frightening. Who is in charge right now? What happens to the laws that affect daily life? And can this government still be trusted to lead? Opposition leaders wasted no time. Statements accusing the Prime Minister of incompetence and secrecy flooded the news cycle. Some called the move irresponsible. Others described it as a sign of internal collapse. Even voices that usually defend constitutional tradition and expressed discomfort with the speed and silence surrounding the decision. And this is where political damage becomes permanent. Once doubt enters the public mind, removing it is almost impossible. Starmer now faces not only political opponents, but a narrative that is rapidly turning against him. This first phase of the crisis is critical. History shows that governments often fall, not because of one decision, but because of how they handle the aftermath. Right now, the country is watching. Every word Starmer speaks next will matter. Every pause will be analysed. The dissolution of Parliament may have been signed by the King, but the political consequences are landing squarely on the Prime Minister's shoulders. And this storm is only beginning. As the hours passed, the shock began to turn into something far more dangerous for Keir Starmer: organised resistance. What first looked like confusion slowly evolved into anger, suspicion, and political calculation. Inside Starmer's own party, unity started to crack. Several senior figures, speaking anonymously, hinted that they were blindsided by the decision to dissolve Parliament. Some admitted they found out through the media, not through internal briefings. In politics, that detail matters. When leaders lose control of information, they also lose control of loyalty. For Starmer, this was the beginning of internal fallout that could prove more damaging than attacks from the opposition. Party members are now openly worried about what comes next. With Parliament dissolved, the path points towards elections, and the timing could not be worse. Poll numbers have already been unstable, public trust is fragile, and internal divisions have never fully healed. Many MPs fear they are being dragged into a political battlefield unprepared. Quiet conversations have begun about leadership responsibility. No one is saying the words resignation out loud yet, but the thought is clearly present. In British politics, leadership challenges often begin in silence, not speeches. Meanwhile, opposition forces are working at full speed to shape the narrative. They're not debating constitutional procedure. They are focusing on emotion. They are telling the public that this crisis proves Starmer is weak, indecisive, and out of touch. Every interview repeats the same theme. Britain needs stability, and this government has delivered chaos. The message is simple, and that makes it powerful. Even voters who do not fully understand the legal process can understand fear and frustration. That is exactly what Starmer's opponents are feeding. Outside Parliament, public reaction is growing louder. Social media platforms are flooded with speculation, rumours and anger. Some users blame the monarchy, others defend it fiercely, but the largest share of criticism is directed at the Prime Minister. People are asking why there was no warning, no preparation, no clear explanation. In moments of national tension, people want leadership that feels present and human. Instead, many feel they are being spoken to through cold statements and technical language. That gap between government and citizens is widening by the hour. International reaction is adding another layer of pressure. Foreign media outlets are questioning Britain's political stability. Markets react badly to uncertainty, and early signs of hesitation are already visible. Allies want reassurance that agreements will hold, but that policies will remain consistent and that leadership will not collapse overnight. All of those concerns land back on Starmer's desk. A Prime Minister under fire at home is rarely strong abroad. This is a reality that history has proven again and again. Behind closed doors, emergency strategy meetings are underway. Advisors are reportedly divided. Some argue that Starmer must act fast, address the nation and take full responsibility for the process. Others believe he should emphasise constitutional norms and distance himself from the decision. This internal disagreement is dangerous. When leadership hesitates between approaches, it often satisfies no one. The longer the silence continues, the more others will define the story for him. What makes this situation especially risky is that it is not just one crisis, it is multiple crises unfolding at the same time. Constitutional confusion, party division, public anger, and international concern. Any one of these could damage a government. Together, they create a perfect political storm. Starmer is now being tested in a way no policy debate or parliamentary vote could ever test him. This is about authority under pressure. As night turns into morning, one thing is clear. The dissolution of Parliament was not the end of the story. It was the trigger. The real battle has now begun, and Keir Starmer is no longer controlling the pace. Events are moving faster than explanations, and in politics, when momentum turns against you, stopping it can feel impossible. As the political shockwave spread, attention slowly shifted toward Buckingham Palace and the role of King Charles in this dramatic moment. Officially, the King acted within constitutional limits, approving the dissolution of Parliament as advised. Supporters of the monarchy were quick to defend the move, reminding the public that the monarch does not rule but follows democratic convention. However, in times of crisis, legal explanations rarely calm emotional reactions. The public conversation is no longer just about what is lawful, but about what feels right. And for many people, this decision feels sudden, unsettling, and poorly communicated. This growing discomfort has placed Keir Starmer in an even more dangerous position. He must defend constitutional process without appearing to hide behind it. If he emphasises royal independence too strongly, he risks looking weak. If he takes full responsibility, he risks absorbing all the blame. This balance is incredibly difficult, and so far critics argue that Starmer has failed to strike it. Political commentators have started describing his response as cautious to the point of paralysis. In moments like these, caution can look like fear. The silence from the Prime Minister during the first crucial phase continues to haunt his leadership. While brief statements were released, many felt they lacked urgency and emotion. People wanted reassurance, not procedure. They wanted to hear that their concerns were understood. Instead, they heard carefully chosen words that sounded distant and rehearsed. That tone has allowed alternative narratives to grow. Conspiracy theories, exaggerations, and half-truths are spreading rapidly, filling the information vacuum left by unclear leadership. Once these stories take root, correcting them becomes almost impossible. Inside the civil service, anxiety is also rising. Senior officials are now working under extreme pressure, unsure how long current policies will remain in place. Projects that took years to plan are now paused indefinitely. Departments do not know which priorities will survive. This kind of administrative paralysis has real-world consequences, affecting everything from public services to national security planning. These concerns may not dominate headlines, but they shape the confidence of those who keep the state running. A government that appears unstable at the top creates uncertainty at every level below it. International observers are no longer hiding their concern. Analysts in Europe and beyond are questioning whether Britain can maintain consistent leadership in the coming months. Trade partners are watching carefully. Diplomatic allies are preparing for possible shifts in policy. Even the suggestion of early elections can delay negotiations and weaken Britain's negotiating position. For a country that once prided itself on predictability, this moment feels like a sharp break from tradition. And once again, the pressure returns to Starmer, whose authority now feels increasingly fragile. Within Parliament's former walls, political rivalries are intensifying. Opposition figures are openly framing this crisis as a failure of leadership rather than a constitutional event. They are accusing Starmer of hiding behind tradition instead of standing in front of the nation. Some are demanding investigations, others are calling for immediate explanations in public forums. The language is getting sharper and the attacks more personal. This is no longer about policy differences, it's about trust, credibility and survival. Perhaps the most dangerous development for Starmer is the growing belief that this crisis was avoidable. Whether that belief is fair or not no longer matters. In politics, perception often becomes reality. If enough people believe that better communication or better planning could have prevented this shock, then blame will follow naturally. The Prime Minister now finds himself trapped between constitutional defence and political reality, a place where many leaders have fallen before. As pressure continues to build, the question facing the country is no longer limited to what happens next, procedurally. The deeper question is whether Keir Starmer can still command authority in a system that now appears shaken. The monarchy, the government and parliament are all under intense scrutiny. Trust, once damaged, is difficult to restore, and with each passing hour, the cost of this crisis continues to rise. With pressure mounting from every direction, the crisis has now entered its most dangerous phase for Keir Starmer. This is the moment where political survival is decided, not by rules, but by momentum. Inside party headquarters, emergency meetings are no longer about strategy for the future, but about damage control in the present. Senior figures are reportedly asking whether Starmer still has the authority to lead the party through what could become a sudden and brutal election campaign. These conversations are happening quietly, but their existence alone signals how serious the situation has become. One of the greatest threats Starmer faces right now is hesitation. Every delayed response allows opponents to strengthen their narrative. Political history is full of leaders who did not fall because they made a single mistake, but because they failed to act decisively when the moment demanded it. Advisors are divided. Some are urging Starmer to address the nation directly, to speak emotionally and to reclaim the story. Others warn that any strong statement could backfire if new developments emerge. This internal conflict is slowing decision-making at the worst possible time. Public confidence continues to erode. Many citizens feel disconnected from the process, confused by legal language and frustrated by the lack of clear answers. Trust in leadership depends on clarity, and clarity has been missing. People are not asking for complex explanations. They want to know who is responsible and what will happen next. Without that reassurance, fear fills the gap. Fear leads to anger, and anger quickly turns into political punishment. This emotional chain reaction is now clearly visible across the country. Opposition leaders are intensifying their attacks. Speeches, interviews, and statements are carefully crafted to reinforce a single idea that this government cannot be trusted with stability. They are repeating it relentlessly, knowing that repetition shapes belief. Some are framing the dissolution of Parliament as a sign of internal collapse. Others suggest that Starmer lost control of his own government. These accusations, whether accurate or not, are gaining traction because they align with the public's emotional experience of shock and uncertainty. Within the former parliamentary system, the consequences are spreading. Legislative work has stopped. Policy momentum is frozen. Civil servants are unsure which priorities still matter. This uncertainty affects everything from long-term investment planning to everyday public services. When governance slows down, the effects are not abstract. They are felt in real life by real people. And those people are increasingly asking why this chaos was allowed to happen. International confidence is also weakening. Markets dislike instability, and early signs of nervous reaction are emerging. Allies are cautious. Negotiations are being delayed. Britain's voice on the global stage sounds quieter when its leadership appears under siege. For a Prime Minister, this is a dangerous signal. A leader questioned at home is rarely respected abroad. Starmer now faces the challenge of restoring confidence on multiple fronts at the same time. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this moment is the sense that events are now moving faster than leadership. The narrative is no longer controlled by official statements or press releases. It is being shaped by reaction, speculation, and fear. Once control is lost, regaining it requires bold action. But bold action carries risk, and risk is something Starmer appears reluctant to embrace. This phase of the crisis is critical because it determines whether the story ends in recovery or collapse. The Prime Minister still has options, but they are narrowing rapidly. Every decision from this point forward will be judged not only on outcomes, but on timing. In politics, timing can be everything. And right now, time is not on Keir Starmer's side. This final phase of the crisis may ultimately decide how history remembers Keir Starmer. Political careers are not defined by ordinary days, but by moments of extreme pressure. The dissolution of Parliament under his watch has already become one of those moments. Whether it becomes a story of leadership under fire or a cautionary tale of hesitation now depends on what happens next. The country is standing at a crossroads, and the direction taken from here will shape Britain's political future for years to come. For Starmer, the challenge is no longer only about constitutional process or political strategy. It is about restoring trust. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it cannot be repaired with technical explanations alone. It requires visible leadership, clear communication, and a willingness to take responsibility. The public wants to feel that someone is in control, that there is a steady hand guiding the nation through uncertainty. Without that reassurance, fear will continue to dominate the conversation, and fear rarely benefits those in power. If early election anxieties are triggered, Starmer faces an unforgiving campaign environment. Every rally, every debate, and every interview will return to the same question. Why did this happen now? Opponents will repeat it endlessly, knowing that unanswered questions weaken confidence. Supporters will argue that the system worked as designed, that constitutional tradition was followed. But elections are not won in legal arguments. They are won in emotional connection. And right now that connection feels strained. There is also the question of legacy. Leaders are often remembered not for what they planned, but for how they responded when plans collapsed. This moment offers Starmer one last opportunity to redefine the narrative. A decisive address, a clear roadmap forward, and a willingness to confront criticism directly could begin to slow the damage. But delay will only harden opposition and deepen doubt. History shows that political storms do not wait for leaders to feel ready. Beyond party politics, the country itself is absorbing the impact of this disruption. Businesses hesitate, citizens worry, institutions adjust. Stability, once shaken, takes time to rebuild. Britain's reputation as a predictable democracy is being tested not because of one constitutional action, but because of how it is handled. The world is watching closely. Allies, rivals, and investors are all paying attention to how Britain navigates this moment. In the end, the dissolution of Parliament is not just an event, it is a mirror reflecting the strength or weakness of leadership in a moment of crisis. For Keir Starmer, this is the defining test. He can emerge as a leader who faced chaos and restored order, or as one who allowed uncertainty to consume his authority. The choice is narrowing, and the clock is ticking. One thing is certain: British politics has entered a new chapter, and it is written in uncertainty, tension, and consequence. The fallout from this decision will not fade quickly. It will echo through elections, debates, and history itself. And when people look back on this moment, they will ask one simple question: who truly led when it mattered most?